Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of What Has Jumoke Been Up To. Today I'm so excited because I'll be teaching you how to make the softest and fluffiest bread you've ever tasted. At this point I was just showing you guys my ingredients, but I'm here to add all the ingredients in the caption. So I added 5 cups of flour into my mixing bowl already, and then I added my baking powder. So you want to add 2.5 teaspoon of baking powder into your bowl. Then I added brought out my milk to make sure my milk was in room temperature. Guys, you want your milk to be in room temperature. So I brought out my milk and I added my milk into a bowl, a cup. I added 4 cups of milk, and we are going to pop our milk into the microwave real quick. So I'm going to microwave my milk for 1 minute, guys, and then I added my sugar into the bowl while my milk was microwaving. Right, so the reason why we are microwaving our milk for 4 minutes is because of the amount of milk we have. We want our milk to be lukewarm, not hot, because if it's hot, it's going to kill all your yeast. So I brought out my 2 sachet of yeast. I added it into my lukewarm milk, guys. Lukewarm once again. And I mix them together. I'll try to just make sure it dissolves a little bit. Sometimes the yeast is still going to float up, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter because all we are doing is just to make sure it adds up a little bit. So mix up your yeast with your lukewarm milk, guys. Once again, lukewarm milk. Then next thing you do is to add your wet ingredients into your dry ingredients. So I added my mixed milk and yeast into the bowl, and I popped it into my stand mixer. Guys, if you do not have a stand mixer, you can use a spatula. If you do not have a spatula, you can use your hand. Trust me, the process is worth this texture of bread. It is worth it. So I popped it into my stand mixer. I allowed it to mix for a while. The next thing I did was to put my egg into my mixer. I put 2 eggs. Like I said, I'm putting this amount of ingredients because of the amount of bread I am making. If you're making less bread, you do not have to use all that ingredient. I'm making 6 loaves of bread. That's why I'm using the ingredients. Just divide it by the amount of bread that you want to make. So at this point, I was just putting my flour little by little into my stand mixer. Now, I want a particular consistency that can only be achieved by being patient with my dough. So I was just adding my flour little by little. And then the next thing I did was to add a pop of vanilla, guys, because that vanilla extract, it gives it this taste that nothing else can give it. So I added 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Of course, turn on my mixer again and allowed it to do its thing. So guys, like I said, you can use your hand, you can use your spatula depending on what you feel like using. Before I used to use my hand, and again I added another cup of flour. I'm adding my flour gradually. Then I poured my melted butter into the mix. Now I melted the butter and allowed the butter to cool down. So maybe before you start this process, you might like to melt your butter first. Please do not pour hot butter into your mix. You're going to kill your yeast. So I added another cup of flour. In total, I was going to use about 11.5 cups of flour for this particular bread I was making. So I was adding my flour little by little, depending on how fast your stand mixer is and depending on how much mixing you can do at a time. And again, it just helps the rest of the ingredients, like your wet ingredients, to mix in properly with your flour as you're adding the flour little by little. At this point, I was done adding everything in my stand mixer, so I poured into my mixing bowl so I can mix properly with my hand. Like I said, guys, I used to mix this thing with my hand. The remaining half of the flour, I poured it into my mixing bowl and I kneaded it with my hand. Guys, trust me, it's worth every single strength you use in making this bread. So I divided my dough into 2 so that everything can rise properly, because if I had left all my dough in one bowl, I did not feel like it was going to rise as much as I wanted it to. So I took a plastic wrap, wrapped my dough in it. If you do not have a plastic wrap it with nylon, guys. If you don't have nylon, look for a clean kitchen napkin and just use to cover it we're going to let it sit for an hour while we try to clean up our mess. So this was after an hour, guys, and look how my dough is looking. It had risen almost times 2 of what it was before I popped it into the microwave or the warm place you have in your apartment for it to rise. So I mixed the two. I mixed the two dough together into one bowl, and I needed it just for a while just to mix everything together. And I divided my dough into two because I was making two different flavors. I was going to make the regular, which I call the classic, and the coconut bread. So I was just eyeballing it at this point because I was going to make 2 coconut bread and 4 regular bread. So I was just eyeballing it to make sure that I have the right size because I've been doing it for a while now, so I kind of know the quantity I need to make one bread. So I brought out my coconut flakes, poured it into my dough. At this point, whatever flavor you want, you can make chocolate chips. If some people prefer nuts in their bread, you can make white chocolate. Now, if you're going to make white chocolate, please make sure you're buying the white chocolate chips and not the baking chocolate chips. If you buy the baking chocolate chips, it's going to melt into your dough and you would not like the texture, like it's going to come out very bad. So I needed my dough with my coconut and make sure everything was nice and evenly distributed. So I prefer to make my own dough with measuring my dough with a scale because I prefer when it's like a particular size. What I do is I set my weighing machine into 90 grams. So each round ball will be 90 grams. Now I'd already greased my pan. Guys, you need to grease your pan so that your bread will slide off easily out. And I rolled my dough like a ball, making sure it is 90 grams each. Now, if you at this point, whatever shape you want your bread to be, that is your option. It's based on your preference, right? I prefer to have like a round ball shape each, and I have 6 balls in a pan. So at this point, it is your preference. Some people prefer to have like a whole loaf kind of thing. You can get a whole loaf pan and shape your bread into a loaf pan and put your thing in it, right? So at this point, I was just making sure that I had 90 grams each for each one of my bread, or for each one of my ball. So I set the ball into an already greased pan. Guys, once again, grease your pan till I got what I wanted. Then I brought the classic flavor, that's the regular bread. I did the same thing, make sure it was 90 grams each, set it into my already greased pan, and I did all that for all 4 loaves of bread I wanted to make. So what we're going to do is that we're still going to cover our bread again. Yes, we're going to cover it and let it sit for another 30 minutes, right, guys? I was just trying to show you guys how I make my ball. Like you're folding like you're folding dumpling. And at this point, all our balls and all our bread were already in their pan, ready to sit for 30 minutes. And then we baked for another 30 minutes, guys. Look at the bread. At the end of the day, this is what you're going to have. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.